You're listening to Criticaleye's Inspiring Leaders podcast. Criticaleye is a global membership community with over 2 decades of experience supporting senior executives in their roles. We work with board-level executives, giving them opportunities to build their knowledge, skills, and access independent reference points outside of their immediate networks. Whether you're stepping up into a more senior role or aspiring to do so, looking to hone high-level stakeholder relationships, drive operational performance, build your own personal resilience as a leader, or have longer-term career goals such as moving into a plural career, Criticaleye's approach supports a range of leadership challenges and ambitions.
Hello and welcome to another Criticaleye Inspiring Leaders podcast. My name is Jacob Ambrose Willson, Senior Editor at Criticaleye, and this episode is being recorded at the 2025 Growth Company Retreat, where leaders of private equity-backed and listed businesses are discussing ways of optimising performance in what we all agree is a quite difficult market at present. So, I have 3 guests with me. We have Tamsin Todd, who is currently a non-executive director at the listed business auction technology group. We have Jon Lowne, global head of IT and digital at renewables firm Lightsource BP. And finally, Paul Kelly, who is global co-lead for the technology practice group at AlixPartners. So really delighted to have you all on the pod. We're going to be discussing digital transformation, a subject which each of you are, very familiar with, having supported, planned and executed digital transformation strategies in a number of different business contexts throughout your careers. Without further ado, Tamsin, I'd like to come to you first. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
All good. Enjoying the retreat so far. I wanted to start by talking about transformation programs, and they can be difficult and distracting in their nature. So really, why implement them, and what are the benefits, especially in the context of digital?
I think what I've seen in many businesses is you get to this point where you can't do more. There's a cap on what you can do with your legacy processes, with your ways of treating data, with your ability to find product market fit with your customers. And it's often those moments, those signals, that flatlining of efficiency and innovation, where it may just be that digital transformation, which might be about core systems, it might be about how you use data, will unlock that innovation, that product market fit into the future.
Yeah. And what has digital transformation looked like for you on the occasions when you've spearheaded it throughout your career at growth companies?
It's often quite a challenging conversation to get started, particularly in companies that have built their success on knowledge and expertise in the business that they operate. They have delighted customers. They have very knowledgeable people doing an excellent job. So that need for transformation feels very uncomfortable at both the level of the organisation itself and its openness to change, and even up to the leadership and the board. So I think in going into those moments of transformation, not just thinking about the technology that's going to transform and change, but also the culture, the people, and how to lead people through that change and help them develop and see this as a positive for the organisation and for their own careers is something to consider from the beginning.
Yeah, okay. Jon, it'd be great to hear from your side as well about the transformation programs that you've worked on, particularly in your current role as head of IT and digital at Lightsource BP.
Yeah, no worries. So building on what Tamsin just said, I think there are a number of different triggers for digital transformations. I guess it would be remiss of me not to mention AI. So technological advances often drive some of those digital transformations. I think operational inefficiencies definitely kind of maturing outdated processes into the new times, and then regulatory changes often do drive some of those digital changes. I think building on what was just said, change management and communication is key. So managing that change through software often means change of business process, and doing them at the same time can cause change fatigue, misunderstanding, and ultimately that then just reinforces the need for training and clear and frequent communication.
Yeah. I'd like to build on the kind of challenges and barriers that you faced around implementing new digital systems. Can you talk through any difficulties that you faced?
Well, so we have just implemented a core ERP for our financial systems. Now, I hate putting ERP under digital transformation because I think that's almost BAU. But it does reinforce some of my points around making sure the business are aware of the scope and the priorities. For financial systems, you kind of think the key stakeholders are just finance, but actually there are so many other touch points around the organisation. Sometimes those other stakeholders don't necessarily, they feel left out basically because the communication and maybe the phase one deliverables are prioritising the finance community and not some of those other business areas. So definitely some challenges around obviously making it clear as to what you're trying to achieve. With any big program, you've got the challenges of cost, time, budget being a big one, and often large programs do take longer and overrun. So making sure that you put contingencies into your budget is key. Some of the other challenges, and again, I'll use A as an example, we've been really successful in some of the internal software development around weather mitigation, hail mitigation, for example, which is critical in some of our solar farms in areas where the hailstones are as big as blocks of ice. We call it whiskey ball because they literally are like the blocks of ice that people ruin their whiskey with. And so we've had some great advancements there, and actually we've been able to help some of our peers because it's around reducing the risk for our insurance companies. You can't do it alone. You need a critical mass.
Sure. Well, Tamsin, I think it'd be good to bring you in here as well. And really, I'd like to know if you've encountered any resistance to change programs and how you counter that.
One of the situations I've seen in a number of different organisations is that the connection between the investment and the change and what that's going to do for the value of the business and its work and its products is not as well drawn out as it might be at the beginning of the initiative, and so you may end up with some tension between the technology and product teams that see the need to do this, and maybe the finance team saying, but what is this going to do? What's the outcome of all of this? How does this actually impact these outcome financial figures that I need to report and we need to see growing? And so that piece of drawing that connection to the lead KPIs that are going to ultimately affect the financial outcomes, I think is a really important piece of work. It's not always entirely clear, but there absolutely are in every organisation I've been in ways of chunking that down, looking at how it might affect efficiency and product, drawing out scenarios. Those scenarios are never going to be 100% correct. Often they're too ambitious in the short term and not ambitious enough in the long term in terms of the impact. But drawing that out, and then as the initiative sort of starts to go into execution, trying to structure it in a way, if it's possible, to start to get some of that value as you go, not it doesn't go into a black box and, a year later, abracadabra, here's the whole thing, done. You try to draw that value out as you go. It gives your finance team, your investors, confidence to start to see that value accruing. So those are a couple of things that I would recommend.
Yeah, can I just build on that? I think one of the dangers, especially through growth phases, are how you adapt your current business process to the software or the product that you're implementing. And one of the challenges is it's too easy to try and say, that imprint what you're doing today in how you want to do things tomorrow. So one of the big challenges is how do you say, no, we need to change the business process to meet the demands of the software. And to your last point, Tamsin, I think that was really key in terms of a lot of the longer digital transformations always were waterfall. And so putting that into agile or the hybrid wagile that allows you to go through those stage gates but deliver more frequently and often is key, especially with realising some of those opportunities sooner. And that certainly takes off some of the pressure on those larger projects that cost more.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Jon and Tamsin. Paul, I'll bring yourself in now. And Jon already mentions AI. It's been a huge enabler of digital transformation for some time now, but it's advancing, and we all know that. How fast are things developing, and how able are growth businesses to simply just keep up with that pace, let alone incorporate some of these technologies into their transformation journeys?
Yeah, thanks, Jacob. I mean, it is moving incredibly fast. To a certain extent, there's been AI as a technology has been around for several years. Actually, it's a bit like when digital came around a decade ago. I can think back 20 years ago when I was digitizing content, putting it into content management systems and pushing it out to digital channels. But there's always a trigger point typically with these waves of technology that really sort of bring it to life. And I think with ChatGPT emerging just over 2 years ago now, that was a real sort of trigger point, if you like, in terms of this AI, Gen AI in particular, sort of wave of technology. It is moving very fast. I think there's lots of use cases that are emerging. We certainly heard over the last couple of days a lot of examples where organisations are already employing the technology and getting really good value from it. And it's that pace actually that I think makes it quite difficult for many organisations. I think for the growth companies, it really depends on your scale and your resources that you've got available to deploy as to what extent can you actually take advantage. You don't necessarily need to be big, but I do think you need to be experimenting and enabling your organisation to innovate around AI. The organisations that I see doing it well are doing it, thinking about it top down, but actually also allowing that innovation to come from the bottom up as well. So, and that's a fine balance because, allowing access to ChatGPT to load data into that isn't appropriate for some organisations. So there's a careful balance, if you like, of innovation and experimentation, whilst also protecting the assets of the firm. But it's exciting. I think, genuinely, this is a game-changing period that we're in the beginning of, and I think there's much more to come.
Yeah, and Tamsin, do you share that excitement in terms of AI and where it's going?
I see, already AI having such an impact at the operational level of organisations, and I think longer term, I think to other innovations, electricity, washing machines, and the way that they've changed the nature of human work, and AI has enormous potential.
What practical advice would you give to growth businesses starting a digital transformation journey today? How can leaders really grasp the opportunities, but also think about the risks involved as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the first thing to do is to not think about it as being a technology transformation. There are dangers that with AI, you're starting to see that happen again, where organisations are looking to implement AI rather than looking at their business and identifying the opportunities and then figuring out what technologies can be used to solve those problems or create revenue growth, for example. So it might sound a little bit trite, but it's a constant kind of reminder to think about the business and then try and match technology solutions to that. I think the other thing I'd say is, and this is to a certain extent, I think we touched on it a little bit earlier, but think in terms of the program of change around starting small. So think big, but start small and scale fast. You really need to be breaking your transformation into manageable chunks. Getting runs on the board creates momentum in the organisation. It also creates buy-in and advocacy around the organisation, and showing that change is possible and the benefits that can come from that as quickly as possible through the transformation are absolutely key. I think you need to also just foster a change mindset in the organisation as well. So a big part of a transformation, depending on obviously how large scale the transformation is, involves a transformation of the people as well and the skills. So it's very much about investing in upskilling your workforce and encouraging innovation at all levels to drive lasting change. Although I work for a third party organisation, I'm a big believer the organisation itself has to go on the journey. It can't be done to the organisation. It can be facilitated possibly, but if you think about it as a journey for the employees of the organisation, so that actually at the end of that journey they're in a much better place, not only with the technology and the processes, but just from a skill set and a cultural perspective, then I think that's also a key factor in driving transformation successfully in an organisation.
Yeah, and Jon, do you resonate with that point in terms of the journey and taking your employees with you on?
100%. In fact, we're looking actually at moving much more towards a skills-based organisation to really leverage those skills. From a technology perspective, we're quite lean and constrained by the resources that we have. We do rely on other, third-party consultancy and managed services. But actually, what we have seen, if I take AA and data science, that we actually have some very clever people within engineering and other business areas that actually we could utilise their skills in delivering successful solutions to the business. I think, again, just keeping on the AI theme, AI means different things to different people. So at base level, it's too easy to think about just Gen AI and ChatGPT. And the other frequent request from a business perspective is, how do I get an AI agent in so I can do my meeting minutes and summaries, right? It's much more than that. And to your point earlier, I think certainly it's not necessarily new, albeit, Gen AI came to the forefront 2.5 years ago with ChatGPT. Automation's been around for a long time. Machine learning's been there for a long time. And we've had some really good success over the last 2 years on applied AI, which is, for a very specific problem or solution. So I mentioned the hail mitigation, but, our agents forecasting, identifying land or rooftop that can take solar, for example, using satellite imagery and a bunch of other stuff, has really helped us to move forward and reduce operational inefficiencies, where we were just having lots of people spend far too much time doing manual searches.
Yeah, thanks for sharing those examples, Jon. Tamsin, I wanted to ask about external reference points. For you, have you been able to have points of reference and benchmarking in terms of the transformation progress that you're making against potentially others in terms of your peers?
I think benchmarking is always a slightly challenging, because no two businesses are alike. What's the Tolstoy quote? Kind of every family's is alike or different in a similar way. And so, however, like having said that, you absolutely want to be looking across, and it might not be at direct competitors. It might be at organisations that operate like you, but potentially in a very different sector. And I think those conversations, they've tended to often happen at the sort of leadership level. People have networks, but actually as you get below that to, the folks working on the product and the technology and the commercial front, actually for those folks to have networks where they can look outside their organisation and compare how are you going at this project, at this initiative? How are you using AI here? You're implementing, this new piece of SaaS software. How that's working, and I think that's getting more and more important in order to to be a successful organisation, to be at the forefront of kind of what the latest thinking is.
Yeah, and Jon, have you been able to lean on external networks for ideas really and support during Lightsource's own digital journey?
Yeah, 100%. I think most people do today. And even Criticaleye with some of the pop-up boards allow that sort of benchmarking with, direct peers or peers from other industries. I think actually what people don't necessarily see is that you can draw similar conclusions. They don't have to be, direct competitors. And we're all sort of working within, similar constraints. And so, as I say, Criticaleye's been fabulous. There are other organisations that we use. There are surveys that we take. And then there is just the natural networking, university friends, colleagues that we've met, people on LinkedIn. There's so much information now where you can share this in a kind of a positive way.
I'd like to go around the table and just ask if there's any final points you'd like to add around the subject. Paul, I'll come to you first.
Back to the question you sort of raised earlier about, it's important that organisations embark on these transformations and give very careful thought to how they're actually setting it up for success. There's so many different things that organisations have to really sort of get involved with these days. It's often, we see organisations often trying to take too much on, actually, and be overly optimistic in their change programmes. I think that inevitably leads to disappointment, overruns, whether that be time or sort of budget. So I think be realistic in what it is that you're taking on board, plan it well, break it up into chunks, make sure it's business driven, not technology driven, and engage your stakeholders. And of course, in a transformation that's often quite broad ranging, you've got a lot of different stakeholders to manage. So engaging with them effectively, communicating well and clearly, especially around topics that can sometimes be quite complex in nature, are absolutely critical.
Yes, thank you. And Tamsin, could you maybe pinpoint one piece of advice for the benefit of listeners looking at undertaking digital transformation?
So I completely agree with the need to be focused and business driven. I think what I'd layer on top of that is care, as leaders, care deeply and give the space for that innovation and experimentation to flourish. That doesn't mean hands off, but it does mean that you give it oxygen, you let it breathe, and you look at what grows.
Lovely. Jon, any final words from yourself?
So same, I'm going to reinforce the business driven, outcome focused, obviously understand the sort of the metrics and KPIs that you're trying to improve. And then I guess a topic for another day, but things, security, compliance and data privacy is going to affect more and more of the data digitalization. And then just to finish off in terms of AI, there's going to be AI integration. So systems to systems, are we going to have AI talk to AI? That's going to be quite interesting. And again, plays into the security and data privacy piece that we will move into in the coming weeks and years ahead.
Yes, I think that's a whole new podcast in itself. But thank you for your insights. I'll wrap it up there. Really useful stuff for our listeners to draw on who might be planning out digital transformation strategies. Tamsin, Jon, Paul, thank you again, and really hope to have you on the pod soon. If you do want to listen to any episodes of our Inspiring Leaders podcast series, you can find them on Podbean or Spotify. But that's it for this episode. Thank you, and bye for now.